Monday, June 22nd, 2020, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So how much more different is our current fractional reserve fiat currency system that's backed by nothing, no gold nor silver, than Wirecard, the German company that's just collapsed, that's been found to be a total fraud? So how much different is it? Well, before I go into Wirecard and talk about Wirecard, I wanted to look back at history and what the founder of the Bank of England, William Patterson, said back in the late 17th century when the Bank of England was created. He said the following: "The bank hath benefit of interest on all monies which it creates out of nothing." So that was William Patterson. That's what he said. So now let's get to the Wirecard story. Some of you might not have heard of this story, but it's a big and important story in my opinion. It has a great deal of similarities with our current fiat currency unbacked system that's run by central banks, by bullion banks, by our governments. So let's go through the story about Wirecard. In the FT, it says Wirecard fights for survival as it admits scale of fraud. Police open probe and German regulator admits mistakes as payments group withdraws previous results. So let's go through the story. Maybe not the whole thing, but I just want to compare what happened there to what goes on in our monetary system. It says Wirecard acknowledged for the first time on Monday the potential scale of a multi-year accounting fraud as the Germany payments group warned that 1.9 billion euros of cash on its balance sheets probably does not exist. So there you go. How is that different from what William Patterson said? And I'll repeat, he said, the bank hath the benefit of interest on all monies which it creates out of nothing. Well, it doesn't exist as well, isn't it? So it's not real gold or silver. So let's continue with the story. The company said it had previously mischaracterized its biggest source of profits and that it was now trying to work out whether, in which manner, and to what extent such business has actually been conducted for the benefit of the company. It withdrew its most recent financial results and said other years' accounts may be inaccurate. As Wirecard's shares resume their precipitous fall, down 33% on Monday and more than 80% since the collapse began on Thursday, the German establishment began its own reckoning. So what about the auditors? Well, the auditors also, they didn't really do their work properly. And we have to give the FT some credit, even though we never see the FT try to expose the fractional reserve system, of course. But it says here, for the past 18 months, the Financial Times had reported whistleblower allegations of accounting fraud related to such third-party business. In October, the FT published documents that indicated that clients listed in documents prepared for auditor Ernst Young, EY, did not exist. So it looks like Wirecard was basically making up things out of thin air, clients out of thin air. And that's why they had a shortfall of 1.9 billion euros. Well, that 1.9 billion euros didn't exist, but what it did help its share price. It did help executives' bonuses. So I'll stop here with this Wirecard story. It looks like the German police is prepared to arrest some of the executives. We'll have to see. But my point here is that here you have a company that created something out of nothing, a total fraud, and basically exactly like our monetary system. And what about fractional reserve? How does that work? The money that you have in your bank account, for example, how does that work? How is the money in the system created? Well, most of it is created through commercial banks. Yes, we think that the central banks create the money, but they only create the reserves for the commercial banks to borrow. And then the commercial banks, what they do, they lend us the money, the public. They lend companies money, they lend countries money. And what they do is, let's say they have a balance of $1 in their account from Mr. Smith. And then you come over and you say, I want to borrow $10. And they will actually lend you $10 on the back of that $1. They don't have to have all the $10. That's what's called fractional reserve. They lend money that they don't have, so out of thin air. So that's how the fractional reserve fiat currency system works. And how that isn't a fraud, to me, I don't understand. But for some reason, the FT and everyone can see that what Wirecard did is a fraud. They made up third-party clients. They made up entries and credits worth over $2 billion. And we have central banks. They've been doing it for hundreds of years, and commercial banks creating this fractional reserve money out of thin air also, but it's not considered a fraud. Even when the Bank of England was under a gold standard until 1914, they had fractional reserve. They didn't really have 100% gold backing their notes. I think the British banking system during the Victorian era and just before World War I had a 1/3 backing of gold. So they did create money out of thin air. There was fraud going on as well, in my opinion. Of course, central bankers are monetary. Non-system really is considered normal. And yeah, that's what being a sound money advocate or a gold bug or a silver bug is all about. It's trying to expose the fraudulent nature of our monetary system. Yeah, it's a lot harder than exposing Wirecard. Why doesn't the FT try to expose our fiat currency system, how fraudulent it is? Well, because it's in the pocket of the bankers that control the system. And just to finish off, I just want to show you a 10-pound Bank of England note. Here you go. Most of you in the UK or tourists that come here, they'll spend that and they won't even look at the note. But if you look below where it says Bank of England, it says, I promise to pay the bearer on demand the sum of £10. And it's signed by the chief cashier of the Bank of England. Back before 1914 and the outbreak of World War I, you could go to the Bank of England with one of these and redeem it for £10 of gold or 10 sovereigns. And that's the other problem I have with this banknote. They've kept that promise, and you can't do that anymore. It's not convertible into gold at a fixed price anymore. And if you call the Bank of England, which I have, to ask them about this promise, they say, well, all that means is that you can bring an old note and replace it for a new one. And my question to that answer was, why don't you write that on the note, that you can replace an old one for a new one? So there you go. There's no difference between what our fractional reserve monetary system is and what Wirecard has been doing fraudulently. I don't think there's any difference. Both have been creating things out of nothing. They've been making things up. The central banks and our current commercial banks, they make up money that doesn't exist, or credit that's backed by nothing like gold or silver, and Wirecard created clients that it didn't exist. They created revenues that didn't exist, but they've been caught. Their executives, it looks like, are going to be jailed. We'll have to wait and see. But the central bankers are still out there, free and running our monetary system. Before I finish, I like to recommend a book about money that will teach you exactly what I'm talking about if it hasn't been clear for you. And it's this one here, What Has Government Done to Our Money by Murray Rothbard. And it applies not only to the United States, but also to all the other countries that use the fiat currency system. So I highly recommend that. I'm going to put a free PDF link below in the description for this book so you can read it. Or you may choose to buy it as well from the Mises.org website. They have a bookshop there. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. We want people to learn about our current monetary system. And also make sure you subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And you can follow me also on Twitter, Facebook, Parlay, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great rest of the day. Take care. Bye.